This is Covering the Spread, part of the FanDuel Podcast Network.
We are officially into draft week. Adam Schefter dropping full columns of information. Todd McShay dropping some similar nuggets in his email newsletter as well. So we're officially getting some actual news in the draft, maybe actual news, which means we can dig in more to the betting odds of FanDuel Sports. We can try to identify potentially some values as of right now. To do that for today, we're talking to Austin Swaim, who writes our mock tracks for FanDuel Research, getting his read on what to make of those reports from this morning and his favorite bets as of Monday for the 2025 NFL Draft. Welcome on into Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast. My name is JimSannes. I am a managing editor for FanDuel Research, joined here as mentioned by Austin Swaim. You can find him on X at Swaim3. He is also on Blue Sky at the same handle. Check out his work at FanDuel Research, where he is a senior editor for us, Austin. Enticing. Very fun stuff on the table for today. Talking NFL draft. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. I have been absolutely, it's been a joy to do this first year. And I have thought this draft is very interesting just because there's not all these top shelf quarterbacks. It's a very different draft than last year. And there's really a lot of nuance to how teams are looking at navigating the board, how they fill their needs, what they can make the best of kind of a class maybe some people view as weaker. I think it's got its strong points in different places. I find this NFL draft really interesting. Way back in the day, my favorite draft is the nerdiest draft of all time. It was the one where Eric Fisher went number 1, Luke Jokel was second. That was a draft sickos draft. And I feel like this is kind of similarly that. And I've had a great time doing it for the site this year.
Mine would be the Reggie Bush draft. I love that. That was fun. And then also, pretty sure this is a different draft, but the one where the Jets got DeBrickashaw Ferguson, who is still above me over my left shoulder right here, and Nick Mangold in the first round. Love that one too, as an old school Jets fan. I think Chad Pennington might have been. No, it was Kellen Clemens was in that draft, second round pick. Weird change to go from two studs along the offensive line to Kellen Clemens. We all have our favorite drafts back in the day. Maybe this year's could become that for some people as well, because I do think there are some pretty fun talking points across this year's draft. We'll break down those with Austin, getting his read on how things could shake out, and then dive into what bets he likes and more. But first, a reminder to make sure you are subscribed to Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Pretty fun couple of weeks here on the show. Of course, we have this show today. We're going to talk more NFL draft on Thursday. I'll be by to break down my last minute bets that I like for the draft on Thursday. Next week, getting ready for the Kentucky Derby and the Kentucky Oaks. Christina Blacker will join us for a couple of shows there. Pitching Ninja back with us next Friday as well, breaking down the first month of MLB. So a lot of good stuff coming your way here on the Covering the Spread podcast. So you just search for Covering the Spread wherever you get your podcasts. Hit subscribe, and if you like what you hear, leave us a 5-star rating and review as well. And of course, the NFL shows do go on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page too. Leave us a thumbs up there, and make sure you are subscribed to get these shows as they go live. FanDuel is the best place to find all your favorite player props, and now you can make a heads-up play with player performance trends. That means whether you want to bet on a player to score 30 points or put up a triple-double, you can check out the latest stats and see who is hot without leaving the app. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So, if you don't already have FanDuel, playoff time is the perfect time to join. You'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. So just visit FanDuel to join today. Make every moment more at FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut. Visit MD Gambling Health Oregon, Maryland. Hope is here. Visit Gambling Helpline MA.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. Now, Austin, as we discussed, you've been doing some mock drafts for us on the site, breaking down your read on the top 32 picks in the NFL draft from January all the way up until now. And that means you've had to go through different picks for different teams. And I wanted to ask you about that because obviously throughout the process, there are some teams that are easy. You know, you get the Cam Ward of the Titans, which you had in your first mock draft. Eventually that one becomes more locked in stone.
Mm-hmm.
What have been the toughest teams for you to predict when you've been going through your this mock draft process, and who are the teams that could be some volatile teams to monitor on draft night?
Yeah, I mean, the whole top of the draft has been volatile, just trying to get a sense on how teams are evaluating these quarterbacks, because there's certainly teams that could use them, but they're just not a lot of confidence that a lot of the quarterbacks are worth an early selection like that. So now we've kind of evolved to this point where we'll talk a little bit. It feels like the top three is starting to get set in stone just a little bit. But now all of a sudden, you mentioned in the open, Adam Schefter dropped a news bomb on us that wasn't overly surprising to me, just because it's a very deep draft at defensive line. And Mason Graham, he is a technician. He is phenomenal to watch on tape. He is this awesome player, but you can get a similar skill set to that later in this particular draft. So now it sounds like the Jaguars at 5, rather than being locked into a prohibitive spot with Mason Graham. You can see it there. The odds have shifted at FanDuel. Graham now plus 110. And we've all of a sudden seen Ashton Jeanty and Tetairoa McMillan hop in here as potential offensive weapons the Jags consider at 5, which is a little bit surprising to me, considering number 5 said Jacksonville's defense was bottom 5 in pass and rush defense efficiency last year. So you think maybe they add a high level defender. I don't know if Jalen Walker is crazy there. So this is really the first wild card spot, truly, I think, in the draft. And then Las Vegas at 6. I don't think anybody has any idea what the Raiders are going to do, especially if Jeanty goes at 5. Then all of a sudden the prohibitive pick comes off the board there. The Saints, we got news last week about Derek Carr maybe nursing a shoulder injury. They could use a quarterback. Do they have one they like enough at 9, or is it going to be kind of later in the draft? A Dallas at 12 exists to be a wild card in all things that they do. And then there are some teams later in the late 20s, mid-teens area that probably like to move back too. So it is a challenging draft, I think, to really pick and plug this player into this spot. Even though there isn't a ton of elite talent, you kind of have an idea who's going early, but there are a lot of spots where it could change quickly.
I want to go back to the Jags. I think that they're a pretty interesting team here. Now, as of this morning, when the Schefter column dropped, you could have gotten Ted McMillan about 25-1 to be a top 5 pick, not at 5 specifically. I didn't have time to look for that when I was reading the column while going to the bathroom. So had to kind of scramble to see what I could get there. He was 25-1, go top 5 at the time. He's now 7-1 to be the number 5 overall pick. Ashton Jeanty plus 180, Mason Graham plus 110. The reason Graham had been so short for so long is apparently the Jags draft board leaked back in March, and it had Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, and Mason Graham at the top. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since then, though. And the reason that Schefter gave is hey, Liam Cohen had Mike Evans back in the day when he's at the Buccaneers, kind of wants this a receiver who can kind of duplicate that, and McMillan could be that. 7-1 Austin is a lot shorter than what it was this morning, though. Do we feel like the value there is dried up? Are you enticed by Jeanty at plus 180, or is this kind of a stay away market for you as things stand?
So I will tell you that my initial reaction to hearing this news is that they leaked that about maybe Jeanty or McMillan because everybody in this draft would love to move back. I think they'd love to collect a spot, especially if you can get what's requisite on the trade value chart for a player that at number 5 overall, I love Mason Graham, but there are certain athletic limitations. His arms are a little bit shorter.
Sure.
He's not the perfect defensive tackle prospect. And there have only been a couple of them in the last 15 years or so that go in the top 5 just because of positional value. I think they would love to trade back if they can. There are a lot of teams that would fit that description. So maybe you leak before Jeanty. It's hey, if you want Ashton Jeanty, maybe you have to come up here and get him. You hop in front of the Raiders, and then we can move back. I just love the fit for Graham here at plus 110. I think if this lengthened and we didn't get really substantiated reports that the Jags were fixated on Jeanty, I'm releasing my final mock draft for FanDuel Research on Tuesday. I really sat here. I thought about it. I think I am going to stick with Mason Graham at that pick. I wouldn't bet that market per se because It sounds like news is volatile and moving here, but I want to give credit to a FanDuel partner because I don't want to take credit for this, but Todd McShay pointed out on his podcast. We sponsor his podcast, so I think I can use a little bit of his info on live here. It's a good point that new Jags GM James Gladstone worked with the LA Rams last year. They took a couple of short arm defensive tackles who had a great impact for them specifically. And Jacksonville needs help in the middle. They've got Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen on the outside. I feel like Graham is a no-doubter if you stick at 5. I think a lot of teams would be very happy to get him top 5 in this particular draft.
Yeah, you made the distinction there, which is pretty important. You said you will put him there in your mock draft, but you wouldn't recommend betting that because they're different things.
Yep.
Saying that he is the most likely pick is different than saying he is, 47% likely to go there. And that's what you're saying at plus 110. So it's an important distinction to make for sure with Mason Graham still being the favorite, but less prohibitive favorite than he was to go 5th overall. You've kind of alluded to this, but the top of the draft seems a bit more set. Things not as volatile there with Cam Ward basically destined to go to Tennessee. Got Travis Hunter minus 900 to go to Cleveland, and then Abdul Carter minus 480 to go number 3 overall. Could kind of say the same thing to Will Campbell. I feel less certain that one's locked in stone at minus 400. I think that if someone offered me a no bet on that, I would take it. If you gave me 3-1, I would take the no on that, but I haven't seen that yet, so can't quite do that. But it does seem like the top of the order is pretty set here, Austin. Have you gotten any sniffs to believe that we could see more volatility up there, or are we going to see the chalk hit on Thursday?
Interesting movement there. When I was looking at some of the odds as I work through my mock draft, because I use the odds just like NFL teams do to see maybe what's going on. Campbell was minus 950 to go number 4, has shortened to minus 400. So that's quite substantial movement at 4. I think it does depend a little bit on what the Giants want to do. And look, the Giants don't always live in sound decision making, but to me, the Russell Wilson signing at this point weeks ago was the first indication that it looks like this 2-3 setup with Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, depending on who Cleveland preferred, was going to be locked in. There are 2 generational players in this draft. Travis Hunter, 2-way phenom, the guy that I have called football Shohei Ohtani. I think I totally understand not passing on that guy, even if you need a quarterback, and even if maybe you kind of like a quarterback in this draft, you'd rather just take the generational freak. And then Abdul Carter, 12.5 sacks for Penn State last year. The dude with his speed, his bend, his jersey number, his college, he looks exactly like Micah Parsons 2.0, maybe even with a little bit more of a mean streak. And those are the 2 best players in the draft. So it's tough for the Giants because they're in this win now position. Brian Daboll, Joe Shane, they want to save their jobs. But then Abdul Carter is clearly the second best player. They don't really have a needed edge. They've got Brian Burns there. They got Kayvon Thibodeau there. So I think the Giants are making the right football decision to take Abdul Carter. You get that generational player in this draft. He doesn't really help them win next year. So if I was in this position as the general manager of the Giants, I might trade this pick. I might get a haul for Abdul Carter from maybe a Carolina or a team that needs a pass rusher in the worst way. But it sounds like the Giants might just take the best player available, and I really can't fault them for that decision.
Yeah, and we're going to talk more about them when we talk about Shedeur as well, which we'll get to in a second here. But as mentioned, Abdul Carter minus 480 to go 3rd overall as things stand. 4th overall pick, again, I would like to fade Will Campbell here personally, given that it seems like it's just kind of a situation where, Patriots need left tackle. We'll give them the best left tackle in this draft, but, not the longest arms, depending on where you get your measurements from. And there's been a little bit of Shefty buzz, a little bit of McShay buzz saying that maybe that they're not locked in. McShay said that there was a Genty buzz in New England at one point. I think that was on his show last week. Anybody stand out to you for 4th overall? Because I'm not I think, again, my preference would be just bet no on Will Campbell if I were given that option. Again, I can't do that. Yeah. Is there any individual option that stands out to you here at 4th overall?
Boy, there are a lot of no bets that I wish were on the board for some of these. But I think the Patriots are in the toughest position in the top 10, where some of this Jaguar smoke might end up having a positive impact for them, where they'd probably love to trade down. And that's where you think about a Campbell, maybe Armand Membu, if you were comfortable with him playing the left side, depending on what their intel says. But, they put out these feelers about, hey, I'm not really concerned about his arm length. We'll sit here at 4 and take him. But it could always potentially be a smoke screen. Right. A lot of people do see Ashton Genty as maybe that 3rd generational blue chip player in this draft. And even though he's a running back, even though this running back class is loaded and perhaps generational, definitely the best since 2018, it's tough for me to mentally go, okay, Ashton Genty, you put this guy from a small school that's closer to 5'8", and you throw him up and you make him the number 4 pick in the draft. It's been a hard mental block for me, even as someone who loves the tape. I think when you have Ramondre Stevenson and you have other holes, like maybe you even consider a Jalen Walker here because they could use an edge rusher. They could use a left tackle. there are premium positions that I think teams try to address at these picks. They'd love to trade back and take Will Campbell. I just don't know who would be coming up here for what. So, maybe it's a chain reaction smoke effect of what the Jags are going to do at 5. If they like Genty, you got to come up to 4 and get him.
Sure.
Man, trading up for a running back in this particular draft class makes my stomach churn. So I think it is Campbell here. I'm going to go here again in my mock draft. But yeah, I'm with you. I think minus 400 as far as implied odds are a little bit high, given you can't really trust anything about this position when the player value doesn't quite meet the 5th, 4th overall pick with Will.
I think that's been the vibe that I've been picking up on too. So going to keep my eyes peeled for that. I'm not expecting to get a no bet because I don't think books want to offer that. Fair enough. I get it. I know that handicapping the draft is a nightmare for them, so I don't want to put additional stress on them. But if I were offered it, I'd be willing to take that on Campbell for sure. I think edge rusher is a bit undervalued overall for the Patriots. Let's see if they have position of first player. I don't have that for the Patriots here, but I think an edge rusher is in play.
Can you check out odds for it? Is Michael Williams in that number 4 market?
He probably is,
because we got rumored this morning Michael Williams might go a lot earlier in mock drafts than we think. Yeah, he's
150 to 1.
But, he battled through an ankle injury this past year. That's why the production was a little bit down. You have Jalen Walker on the other side. He's going to eat up sacks for Georgia. But in just terms of a pure edge rusher, I could see Williams end up being the best guy in this entire class, including Carter, because he's got the tools, 6'5", super long arms. Like, he's built like a top 5 edge rusher. He's just not quite there yet, and I think the ankle injury hampered his development in terms of proper technique, getting his pad level in the right spots. But, man, that's very interesting. He's a long shot dart because he's the one edge that I think the Patriots might look at there. Jalen Walker's more of a hybrid. He's definitely undersized for the edge position. He's a good, interesting player. You love his character and his competitiveness, but I think a top 5 pick is kind of crazy for his size. So maybe my interest in the betting market here is Michael Williams if we start to get some smoke that Campbell might not be the pick here.
Okay. Again, Campbell minus 400. So we'll see if that does shift. You mentioned that it had been shortening a bit or lengthening a bit. Maybe we'll see that movement continue as we get set for Thursday night. Now, we talked about Genty, both for the 4th and 5th overall pick. The place Genty has been pegged to for most of this draft process is actually to your Las Vegas Raiders. And if you go to the Raiders positional bets, they are plus 110 to draft a running back with their first pick as of right now. My favorite bet of the draft is actually in this market. I want to hear your read first, then I'll give my take on this. But I'm kind of curious, what's your read on the Raiders, given you are a Raiders fan, with where the markets stand?
When I think about where I would want to no market, I would want no on running back in this market. I'd love it because, I think it's a very tough read to figure out what this new regime in Las Vegas is going to do. This has been the most consistently stressful pick of doing 4 or 5 mock drafts for the site now, is because I don't think that the Raiders are going to take Ashton Genty here. It's not a complete polished roster where, yes, they could use definitely running back help. Do you think they just hired Chip Kelly? Chip Kelly just worked with 2 of the other top 5 running back prospects in this same draft class, in Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. And there's this loose connection about, Pete Carroll took Rashad Penny all those years ago, but it was an epic failure. So now he's going to do it again. It's kind of interesting logic and thinking. And, Peter Schrager leaked out this morning that maybe the Raiders were considering Michael Williams at this number 6 spot. I saw Todd McShay in his newsletter said the same thing. Armand Membu, I don't think is crazy here. What I have now mocked for 3 straight mock drafts and I'm going to keep, I think there is a no doubt trade for the Raiders that makes so much sense for both teams. San Francisco maybe parts with a late 3rd rounder, 4th rounder maybe. They move up 5 spots. They get Armand Membu, great fit in their zone running scheme. Lock down the right tackle spot opposite Trent Williams. The Raiders move back because I think their primary need is a corner. I would love Jahdae Barron for them at 11. He's a great fit as kind of a nickel zone corner in Pete Carroll's system. I think it would be a great fit for both teams. So I kind of like corner here at plus 850 if I was running the team, but I'm not. So it's kind of a wild card. I'd be interested to hear what your read in it is.
Yeah, I think that the best bet on the board right now is for them to draft a defensive lineman / edge, plus 750 at FanDuel Sportsbook. There was a lot in that Schefter piece about how Pete Carroll wants his edge rushers. I think that McShay said a similar thing, and they were both kind of on the vibe of, we don't think Genty is as locked in here as possibly maybe was initially perceived. Now, the question is, do you want to go with defensive lineman / edge or at linebacker? Because Walker, I believe, is labeled as a linebacker for the purposes of this specific market.
Ooh,
so
okay.
you're kind of in a weird situation. I think that the defensive lineman / edge is the better bet personally, but maybe just split your unit in half and put a little bit on both of those two. Because I think that in general, I agree with you where running back is overvalued as of right now. Offensive lineman was 7 or 8 to 1 last week, now down to plus 270. I think that movement was correct because I think that, as you said, Membu could definitely be in play for this pick. I think for the Raiders, honestly, if they were to stick and pick too, I know that their offensive line not as bad as people think it is. Honestly, it's not a huge need, but like they've got good players in that range who would justify that enthusiasm. But I think as things stand right now, either that defense lineman / edge or a linebacker market, both intriguing because I do think that the Raiders, based on what the reporting has been recently, want to address that position. And there are guys who actually do fit that need who could realistically go and not be reaches in that range.
Yeah, and you think of new GM John Spytek, the roots in Tampa Bay. They've spent premium positions. Tristan Wirfs, right tackle, now turned left tackle. Graham Barton at center. So you look at by the way, I look at those organizational trends when I'm doing mock drafts. I love doing it with the Bengals because they never move, they never trade, and they never pick outside the Power Four conferences. So you get these trends on how teams pick over time as long as their management structure stays. I like to look at those things in mock drafts. So I think your read's good there, Jim. By the way, if we get this weirdness with the Jags going offense at 5, Mason Graham also classifies in your market defensive line edge. So that's another bonus to taking that category.
That doesn't hurt. Didn't think about that, but you're very true. You're very correct. That would be a fun little addition to that one as well. All right. Now, Austin, you are a Colorado alum. So let's talk some Shedeur Sanders because a lot of interesting stuff being reported about him this morning as well. It sounds like the Giants' interest is legitimate, just not at number 3. It seems like that'd be more of a trade back into the first round to get him. And the interesting thing here, if you look at FanDuel Sportsbook, the favorites to draft Shedeur Sanders right now are the Saints, but it does not sound like they want to draft Shedeur Sanders. Todd McShay said they would not take him in either the first or the second round with their pick, and they may prefer Jackson Dart. Yeah. So we got a situation where the favorite is being reported as not being in on this player, which should in theory create value elsewhere. The question is where, because the Browns plus 370, they're not taking it 2. It'd be either sticking at 33 or trading up there. The Steelers at 21 plus 360, the Giants plus 420. What's your read on the Shedeur Sanders draft market and where we could see him go on Thursday or potentially Friday night?
Yeah, I think when you look at the lay of the land, at least from an odds maker's perspective, he's off the board for first round picks. So you presume he's going to go there. And he's minus 210 to go in the top 10. So they reasonably think it's going to be first half of the first round, which is a big trade for the Giants, for the Browns, if they are going to come back up with their second round pick. I don't think the Saints would come all the way back up for him. I'd be looking at New Orleans, maybe thinking about Jackson Dart instead, like you said. And like you said, I'm a Colorado alum, right? I really have done my due diligence. I wanted to be unbiased because Shedeur Sanders made – no, not exaggerating, the happiest moments of my alumni football life since I've been a Colorado fan and alumni. But I got him as my quarterback 3 on my board. That's not to say that I don't believe he's not a franchise quarterback. I've kind of said the melting pot that I see is like Geno Smith with Matt Ryan and Kenny Pickett. And like there are different traits from those guys. Has a tendency to drift in the pocket and try to make things happen off schedule a little bit more than any of them. There's stuff to clean up, right? And he's not a perfect prospect. Maybe the arm strength isn't perfect. That's why you see him falling out of the top 3 from some of these teams. Like the Browns are like, hey, I need a quarterback. Giants need a quarterback, but they're not taking him so early. My favorite team in this market is the Browns at plus 370. They are first pick in the second round, so they can have easy access to move up from 33. I don't want to give away draft capital if I'm Cleveland, but the reason why I feel this way is they have the Deshaun Watson contract. It is a disaster. They have lost a lot of integrity with their fan base with how that move ended up going. The owner came out and said it was a swing and a miss. You never hear that, right? What a better way to erase that than all of a sudden you reunite Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter in Cleveland together. And it's possible, and it seems possible, at least by the way this board is trending. And the thing about that is so interesting about not only Sanders, but Jackson Dart, you could even throw Jalen Milroe in this mix. There will be opportunities for these teams to move up. Everybody would love to move back. I tweeted last week, the teams that win this draft might be the ones that find a way to actually move back because everybody is trying to move back and get more of those second, third round picks where this draft's depth really is on display. Everyone would love to move back. So it's a question of where teams feel their intel is to go up, grab this guy. Right now, I have Shedeur Sanders coming off the board 15th preliminarily in my mock draft that's coming off tomorrow that's a trade, and I'm having Cleveland move up from that spot because I think that they're live to do so. Now, I'm going to have to take in Schefter's report, see a little bit more how I feel about my plan for Jackson Dart, because it was a little different maybe than what they were saying, but I'm still figuring this stuff out in real time. I like the Browns here, but this is a truly wide open market.
I mean, the draft changes every 5 minutes during the week of the draft, so it makes a lot of sense. The Browns, you mentioned, plus 370. I do think the Giants are pretty fun, plus 420, just given that it's been reported primarily by Todd McShay, but by others as well. There may be some disagreement in the front office about what they think about Shedeur Sanders, to the point where they haven't ruled out drafting him at 3rd overall. I think there is zero shot that happens personally. Agreed. But that does imply, if he were to fall further, the Giants could be that team. Okay, let's appease this personnel staff. Let's trade up. We can get him there. Plus 420 for the Giants. I think that's a pretty good number. So I do think they're also pretty enticing, but I am firmly out in the Saints. I think that is a bad number based on the reporting at plus 220 as things stand now.
Yeah.
You mentioned that there are markets on players to go to be a top 10 pick. You mentioned where Shedeur was standing there. We also got a top 5 pick to be a first round pick. Where are you seeing value there right now, Austin?
Yeah, this situation was fluid, but I really didn't find a ton of value in a lot of these markets. So my first advice would be tread a little bit carefully. But in the top 10 pick market, really the closest thing you're going to find to a pick 'em is Tyler Warren. He's minus 140 in this market. I actually think that's still a pretty darn fair price, south of 60% implied, when it's currently not insane to me that he might go 4, might be a little high to the Patriots, but 5, 7 to the Jets, and then 9 to the Saints wouldn't be crazy, or 10 to the Bears, which is kind of a rumor that's gaining steam. It's down to plus 290 that the Bears go tight end. I am expecting a mad dash for the services of both tight ends in this class. That's not only Tyler Warren, but Colston Loveland, who we might talk about a little bit later. And it's just because when I dug into the tight end class, I was frankly underwhelmed based on what I was billed as a really strong, deep tight end class. There were concerns about Harold Fannin at the Senior Bowl. His measurables didn't come out to what you ideally would hope for from like a day 2 sort of pick at tight end. I'm not the biggest Mason Taylor guy in the world. And then Elijah Arroyo has kind of been one of these postseason risers, minimal production. I don't feel like it's a particularly strong tight end class, and I can see these two being very highly coveted to the point where I mentioned teams are willing to move up and anybody would move back. I could see someone sliding into the late top 10 just to scoop up Tyler Warren, because there are a lot of teams that need tight ends. I'd say the Jets, Colts, Broncos, and Chargers, they badly need to address the position. And then about 8 other teams, including I'd add the Kansas City Chiefs in here, absolutely should address tight end at some point. So,
whoa, we can't supplant tight end 1 in the whole universe, Noah Gray. No. How dare you?
I definitely think that they like to run 2 tight ends, and they
got to run 3. You're not taking Noah Gray or I guess Travis Kelce out the field, but Noah Gray has to play.
I'm talking about a post Travis Kelce landscape. They're honestly pretty locked and loaded to be a contender right now. But when you plan like later rounds tight end, I don't think the Chiefs are moving up for a Tyler Warren per se. But these guys, I think their services are going to be highly coveted, and it's a year where maybe you take a tight end a little earlier because we got 2 really good tight end prospects, and the rest of the draft is a little underwhelming in top end talent.
Well, if they get a good tight end, like if they find Colston Loveland somehow, my Noah Gray dynasty shares will be in shambles. So I am praying for my bags that does not happen on Thursday night. Any other bets that you like, Austin, on the board? It can be, we had the bets on teams to draft a certain position, stuff like that. Anything else stand out to you as things stand right now?
So I've got one more that I was looking at in the first round pick market, and then we'll dive into a few teams as well after this. But this is a long shot, so keep that in mind when you go to bet it. It's not exactly like, hey, I've got intel that I'm hearing such and such. Logically, I actually think there are a lot of guys in this market that are in that minus 700 to minus 300 tier where they're pretty heavily favored to be first rounders. Some of them are slipping out of the first round. I was counting on my hands. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't have this guy in the first round. He's so good. He's so talented, like in Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State. But you run out of spots. There's only 32 spots. And I feel like this is one of those drafts where it's really good to pick in the second round. But I have Arianti Ersary, 43rd overall on my board. I don't even have a first-round grade on him myself. I'm not even sure the team that takes him would. But offensive tackle, it's about supply and demand. Offensive tackle, maybe second to just quarterback, is a position that will go earlier than it should. I've got 6 tackles in my top 43. Ersery is the last of them. I don't have another one until 90, and that's because, even some talent evaluators way better than me at this, that like Todd McShay, Daniel Jeremiah, they see Emory Jones Jr., Donovan Jackson more as guards, even though they had tackle experience in college. I totally buy that. Ersery to me is the last stop until like 90th overall on my board, which is Ozzie Trapilo from Boston College. There could be a mad dash to get these tackles quick early in the first round. That could move guys like Kelvin Banks, Josh Connerly, Josh Simmons up the board. Maybe they even go top 20 way earlier than some people are forecasting at this point. And then all of a sudden you get to teams like the Chiefs, like the Texans, maybe the Rams could be in this conversation. They need a tackle. They all went already. So Ersery to me is a very interesting prospect. He's 6'6", 331, 33 and 1/8-inch arms. Really one of the 2 undisputed left tackle frames. He doesn't have arm issues. He doesn't have height issues. Him and Josh Simmons are the guys that look like left tackles. A lot of issues on tape. Could refine his pass protection. Absolutely. He's not a finished product. But is he a guy that has a first-round ceiling at tackle? I think he does. At plus 500, I could see him above all of the other sorts of long shots in this market sneaking into the first round, just based on supply and demand.
Ersery currently 5-1, as you mentioned, at FanDuel Sportsbook to go in the first round. There's been a lot of buzz in general about offensive linemen and defensive linemen going very fast on Thursday night. So I would definitely bode well for this. This is one where you can take advantage of that if you think that you agree with that thesis over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Ersery 5-1 to go inside the first round. You mentioned there were some positional bets too that you liked. What are those as things stand?
Yeah, we'll do it. I'll try to be quick because, I dive into these markets. I'm such a nerd where I'm like, oh, I like that number. I like this long shot. That could be a possibility. But we'll go in chronological order, Jim, just down the draft board. I'm looking first at the Indianapolis Colts. Tight end is plus 115. You look up and down this roster, actually very impressed. It's very complete. They don't have a ton of needs. I thought this could be a safety early in the process, but they signed Cameron Bynum in free agency over from Minnesota. It's starting to sound like Tyler Warren. He's close to falling out of that top 10 based on the odds we saw. He's the least likely favored in that market. I think you get into there. Colston Loveland is another guy that could potentially be available at 14, or maybe they have to shift up a couple of spots to make sure they secure. This is Indianapolis's marquee need, and they are going to be in a position where maybe they part way with a 3rd or a 4th round pick to ensure that they secure one of the top 2 guys that immediately make that offense better. I'm getting a little scared that Chris Ballard's talking about quarterbacks again. That scares me a little bit with Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones in the fold, but quarterback not even listed here among these favorite options for the Colts. That makes me feel real confident at tight end. The tough sell is that maybe if they didn't go that direction, you'd ask Austin, what are they going to do? Tyler Booker, you'd have to shift him to a different spot with Quentin Nelson there. It's kind of an awkward fit. He also isn't really the archetype of the type of guard they try to look for in that blocking scheme. So it's a little clunky outside of tight end. I think they move up, get one of the 2 guys.
Their archetype of player is freak. They just want to draft physical freaks. The dudes who had the best, RAS scores, athleticism scores at the combine, that's the Colts kink. And so Booker won't really be that guy. But definitely Colston Loveland didn't work out because he had a shoulder injury, but he is a good athlete. So if he's there, that can make a lot of sense. Warren, a lot of fun to watch. I can see that for sure. So Austin is on tight end plus 115. Any others you like as things stand?
Yeah, so the next spot down the board that I saw is interesting. And these are some of the teams picking later, which I think adds to the ambiguity. They are not in control of their destiny as much as the early teams. But Pittsburgh Steelers, quarterbacks plus 230. They're in an interesting position where we know that the quarterback room as it sits now is Mason Rudolph as the starter. Aaron Rodgers, rumors abound. I think by the minute, at least if they're soaking this in as I am, you probably want to be less involved in this shenanigans as it is. He continues to not make up his mind. Now, I don't want to say anything about personal stuff he was talking about, but it's just, we know it's a circus. So I look at the Steelers. They need a quarterback, absolutely. And the problem is they now don't have a 2nd round pick because they traded it for DK Metcalf. They're in a position where they'll pick at 21 and then they don't pick again for a long, long time until some of these best quarterback prospects are gone. I don't think they'll sit at 21 per se. If maybe somebody wants to move up, they could leap the Chargers if they're interested in a defensive lineman, especially there are paths back. But I think that they end up taking a quarterback here. And the thing that sold me most, Jalen Milroe invited the draft. The NFL does not want these kids to sit in the green room all night and not get drafted. He's now invited to the draft. And like, typically that's a sign you're going to be a number 32 pick. I think the last guy that wasn't selected was Will Levis, right? And he ended up going way later, right? And coffee, mail, all that stuff about, we thought Levis might've gone third overall that year, but Jalen Milroe getting invited, I don't think you do that based on contingency of a trade. Like the Browns and Giants, wink, wink, we'll trade up for you. It's kind of a hard thing to guarantee. To me, I think the Steelers at 21 is interesting, especially when they've watched Lamar Jackson tear them apart for a few years. Maybe get that super athletic guy that can make plays off schedule. Milroe is not my favorite prospect. I think he's got a lot of work to do with accuracy, but this also hedges a Shedeur trade. I think you get a lot of good stuff at plus 230 for a team that needs a QB.
Yeah, and I think it was Schefter, I believe it was either him or McShay, was talking about the fact that the Steelers initially did not plan to take a quarterback, but then they realized that Shedeur Sanders might be there for them. So they kind of started doing due diligence, kind of doing more work there. It does sound like Mike Tomlin likes him. So
Yeah.
I do think that is very much in play for them. Plus 230 right now, Steelers are to draft a quarterback as things stand. Any final thoughts, Austin, before we send you off to finalize that mock draft before tomorrow?
Oh, I mean, I had a couple more for you if you want them.
Let's do it. Let's go.
Okay, yeah. So let's take a look at the Vikings. Minnesota, interesting team. They only have 4 picks, so I think they'd like to move back and get another pick or two if they can. We'll see what they can pull up. But Minnesota signed 2 corners in free agency. Isaiah Rodgers, Jeff Okudah. Took a little bit of strain off of that corner position. Safety is very, very thin for them. You look, they got Harrison Smith and 3 guys I don't really know very well, and I try to stay in the loop in that position. I think safety at plus 320 as I'm going through my mock draft. I really like Nick Emanwari, physical freak from South Carolina. He lit the combine on fire. Malachi Starks, the ultimate technician in the secondary, super smooth hips, great ball skills. I have a hard time putting them much earlier than like this 24th pick where the Vikings are going to be. And honestly, sometimes if the Vikings wanted to trade out, I've got them sliding much later just because of safety needs versus who ended up falling from premium positions. God, if you have 4 quarterbacks go by 21 with Jalen Milroe somehow, then you got a lot of open available picks. I like safety for the Vikings plus 320. Could see them leaning either direction. I think Brian Flores would love to get his hands on a mold of clay like Nick Emanwari and be able to have that super physical, freaky guy that he could bring down into the box. Emanwari, a little bit of a concern because he's a little stiff in coverage, but I don't think this is an Isaiah Simmons situation where he's kind of out of position. Simmons never really had a position at linebacker, safety, flex between the two. Emanwari is a safety. He can improve in coverage, but he is an awesome box safety right now. I kind of think he's a little Kyle Hamilton-esque, and he's going to go in the first round. And I see Minnesota being a team that can pull the trigger on him.
You mentioned Hamilton. The Vikings a couple years ago were in position to potentially draft Kyle Hamilton, traded down so the Lions could take Jameson Williams. Vikings fans had never forgiven Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, despite the fact they made some really good moves since then. Yep. The Ravens are a couple spots behind the Vikings, also need a safety. They tend to get Nick Emanwari or Malachi Starks in a lot of mock drafts. So we could have some like really rough PTSD flashbacks to the Vikings. They trade back. The Ravens draft a safety. That safety winds up being a freak, as all players that the Ravens draft are.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, Vikings fans, I'm praying for you. I am praying for your happiness because it could be a rough ride if we get flashbacks again on Thursday.
Yeah. Or organic trade partner here, Kansas City. Kansas City's got 10 picks. They could leap in front of Houston at 25 for their pick at offensive tackle.
Yeah, I think that would be fun too. Okay, which other ones stand out to you right now?
One more, and then I'll quit bugging you. I'll let you get back to this market and dive in here. Los Angeles Rams. I thought this would be a left tackle team as this process kind of went through. Then they signed Alaric Jackson to a huge deal. Like, he got way more money than I was expecting at left tackle. They've got Rob Havenstein. It seems to me like it'll be a corner unless we have a Jalen Ramsey reunion somehow brewing between these two teams, but I don't think so. They're probably hopeful Jahdae Barron slips all the way to 26. That would be a home run for the Rams. But then you got another FSU Seminole as R.E.A. Thomas, a guy that I think I like a lot more than other odds makers. He ran a slow 40. I don't always care particularly about that. I love his length, his disruptiveness at the ball. And then Maxwell Hairston did not run a slow 40, 4.29 40 at the combine.
99th percentile, I believe.
Yeah, super fast 40. He'll slip into the first round. So depending on if they want speed or length, disruptiveness, my corner window, I have 15 different defensive backs, including safeties in my top 75. To me, it opens right around this 25 spot. Cornerback for LA Rams now favored plus 260. I think it's a good dart. To me, the Alaric Jackson contract, don't think it's going to be an offensive tackle here. Maybe guard, but corner should be favored more than plus 260 in this market, in my opinion.
If Gray Zabel were there, I think that would be intriguing for them. Another offensive lineman, interior guy. I think that's a bigger need for them as things stand right now.
Yep.
But sounds like he's getting a lot of love and might not be there when they pick. So that could definitely curtail those plans. The Rams, again, corner is plus 260 for the Rams as of right now. That's all that we have here for today. But as mentioned, I'll be back with you on Thursday. Going to break down last minute bets for the draft. We'll have all those like night before the draft. Here's what I'm hearing kind of articles come out. We'll break down takeaways from those and distill them to see which value could still be available on the board on Thursday. So join us here Thursday on the Covering the Spread podcast feed, but also on the FanDuel Football Betting YouTube page. Subscribe there. Leave us a thumbs up. We appreciate those of you watching YouTube as always. Austin, appreciate the time. Good luck finalizing the mock draft. We'll talk to you once again soon.
Thanks, Jim. Sounds good. Hopefully my mock draft isn't in complete shambles by the time you're on the air Thursday, but it probably is. It's that time of year.
They all are. That's just kind of the reality in which we live. And if it's not done dust by then, it'll be dust by 10 o'clock on Thursday. So it comes for all of us at some point. Find us on X and Blue Sky at ASWAIM3. I'm on X and Blue Sky at JimSannes. You can find FanDuel Research on X at FanDuel Research. Big thank you to our YouTube producer, Justin Lane, for his work in the video side of things. Thank you, Justin, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you for betting the NFL draft. We'll talk to you once again Thursday to round up all of the last minute news. This has been Covering the Spread, a FanDuel Research podcast.